Hello and welcome to another episode of the CollabTalk podcast. And this show is dedicated to exploring how and why we collaborate, whether one-on-one, within small teams, or across an entire organization. And through conversations with experts and practitioners, with real-world stories and practical insights, we break down what makes collaboration work or fail and how to improve it. So that's broadly what we do on the podcast. We have a lot of great guests that have come through talking about different technologies and business, like leadership development and collaboration technology, kind of all those things mixed in. Today, my guest is Kevin Monahan, General Manager of ESPC. They run international conferences and content programs for the Microsoft tech community. And today we're talking about, this is something like a topic, I think, Kevin, we've talked about flavors of this for a while, of driving year-round community engagement in tech. It's a great topic, but welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Christian. This is a first for me to be on your podcast or any podcast. So
award-winning ESP Best of podcast, by the way. Yes, thank you.
You got to plug it before I did.
Well, so give us an overview of your role and maybe some of the history of ESPC.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Kevin Monahan. So as Christian said, I've been working for ESPC for about the last 8 years. So we're part of a company called Qualtech. We're based in the west of Ireland in Galway. So a very proud west of Ireland man here. And we've been organizing. So the company started organizing and still does to this day software testing conferences. So we have a brand called Eurostar, Automation Star. That's a separate team, business unit that organizes that side of the house. And then our team was actually born out of that in the Microsoft SharePoint space. So ESPC being European SharePoint Conference. So going back to 2010, 2011 was the first ESPC. SharePoint community in Europe underserved. Microsoft used to run conferences here. There weren't anymore. This all predates me at the company, but this is where the chance came to bring everybody together. The company knew how to do so. And it has been delightful to see it grow and be part of that journey since. And I'm from Galway, but my wife and I were working and living in London. We've been away a bit of travel, and the dream was always to move back to the west, back to Galway. And this was the job that got me here. And I have to say, a fantastic small company, brilliant people to work with, local family-owned business. And yeah, I built up some experience over the years in London. I'm a marketing guy by background, by study, by profession, and came here and was working on the marketing with the guys here, and then took over as the general manager at the worst time possible when we were through COVID, when you couldn't run what we do, which is in-person conferences, and we do the year-round community piece too, which is extremely important to us. So we've been working on that, and I'll pause for breath in case you want me to take that in any direction, Christian.
Yeah, no, this is, I mean, again, I've been involved since the first event in Berlin back in 2011. And so I know there were the two virtuals, like while things were kind of shut down, but I've been at every one of the in-person. I still ask every year, like, there needs to be like a leaderboard or something of the group of us that have been to every single one of them. Like, I want to know that we need to take a picture or something together. Because I thought, just to be fair too, like, I'm pretty sure I told you that, or somebody else on the team, and they also wrote that down. Nothing happened. So but
you saw me write it down. I think it's a great idea, and I know that some people I talked to at the conference who tell me brilliant stories. I mean, we have Eric Overfield. I hope wouldn't mind telling. Eric met his wife at ESPC 2015 in Stockholm. Again, before my first was ESPC 16 in Vienna. I hadn't actually officially joined the company yet, but it was like, if you're going to join, it'd be great to see the event, meet everybody, and that was a brilliant idea. But yeah, people have a real history like yourself with the event, and you feel that when you're there. It's a really nice thing that it's old relationships, new relationships, old friends, new friends. And that's part of the joy of it. It's all about bringing people together. There's so much to talk about, shared interests of people there, but great diversity within that, because, so you said international conferences. So our events are out of Europe. but we do have an international audience travel, but it's mostly Europe. But within Europe, of course, you got a lot of countries, a lot of people. And so you get that lovely mix of culture, language, interest, background, context, and so on. So throw it into this melting pot, and you get great conversation and so much more.
Well, I think that moving around, I mean, so I want to ask you about that in a little bit too, because that, I mean, one of the things with running user groups, organizing regional events, things like that is to find a location that works if you can, and then never move it. So it creates consistency. People like know where it is, know what time, like those kinds of things. And I know you have to factor in a lot of things. So one, you're not entirely in control of. If Microsoft moves their major events, that impacts you guys. You might have had signed contracts already on certain locations, but if suddenly Microsoft decides we're going to push our event into December, the early December, then you guys have to refactor kind of all those things and scramble. But then you're also dealing with, the communities that are within each of those regions in Europe and moving that around. So that gets into the, how do you grow, not just maintain community. I do want to ask you too about the name, because so it started out, and if you go like looking for it and look up, ESPC 2025 for this year's event, and it goes back to the original domain name that has SharePoint in it and its history. So it started out as the European SharePoint Conference, ESPC.
That's right.
And then it evolved and added Azure and Power Platform into it. And you guys then, like a year ago, just said, we're just an acronym now. Like Share, it's ESPC.
Correct.
Or
so
Madonna,
exactly.
Madonna, or okay.
IBM, who don't make international business machines anymore. So we are European SharePoint Conference originally, and that's why it's ESPC now, because the SP is SharePoint, and Jeff Teeper said that recently, and that is the heart of the conference was a SharePoint heritage and remains. There's a huge interest and engagement still around SharePoint from attendees. And as you said, the reason to shorten to ESPC was two reasons. One, because that's what everybody called us, because people don't say European SharePoint Conference. But two, as you said, it had become European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Conference. So definitely nobody was going to say that. And technically incorrect, and the technology, and we've got Microsoft 365, and where does Azure sit within this, and so on. And it just made sense to go, well, this is what everybody calls us. It's catchy, it's short, it's our heritage. SharePoint remains, as I said, a heart of, but there's so much more to talk about around that as the Microsoft technologies have evolved, Microsoft 365 suite. So ESPC seemed to fit. And as I said, ESPC belongs to Qualtech. Qualtech's been in the background, but it's a question now, as we've added since COVID, you kind of touched on it. Out of ESPC, you mentioned Power Platform. During the virtual conferences during the pandemic, we were asking people, how can we support you? What are your big goals for next year? What more can we do through the virtual conferences, feedback forums, and market research and the likes? And a lot of people said, I need to learn more about Microsoft Power Platform, low code revolution, no code, so on. And when we looked at it, it actually, to fit it into ESPC, there's a lot to talk about there. We actually split that out into its own conference, which is now EPPC, so the European Power Platform Conference. So that kind of added to the family, and that was born out of ESPC, but it felt like a separate conference. And that was obviously a considered decision, right or wrong, but there's so much to talk about in ESPC, which is Microsoft 365 and AI. We kind of it's clear now that that's the, speaking to lots of people, that it's Microsoft 365 and AI. So that's ESPC, EPPC, Power Platform focus, and some dynamic CRM, because they're so related. And then the new baby in the family was born last year, which is the European Microsoft Fabric Community Conference. So again, there was an interest and a demand, and it's like, well, Fabric, there's a Power BI, Power Platform related element, but again, so much to talk about, a different audience in many ways when you get into the data and analytics space. So now we have the Fabric conference as well. So this week in the States is the FabCon US conference, and then we have the FabCon Europe conference that we've been running now since last year. So that's the kind of under the ESPC umbrella fit now 3 conferences. So that's been a fascinating journey over the last couple of years. And it is really led by people saying, I need to know more about these technologies, or my colleague needs to know more, or my partnership is moving towards this. And so, yeah, it's been mad, but great to do that.
Well, I know that some people say, so well, why doesn't Microsoft go back to the old way of doing, like the tech ed events and things that were across all the various technologies? It was more focused on the role, like the IT pro and engineers, the dev side of things, because they have now. I mean, so it kind of evolved. Tech ed merged things, and then became Microsoft's their marquee events. Ignite in the fall, which happens in November now, and hopefully stays consistent in November so that everybody else could do things. And then Build, which is in May every year and is engineer developer focused. And there was kind of and there was the partner conference, which is now gone. It was the WPC, the Worldwide Partner Conference. Then it was Inspire, and now it no longer exists. And I know they tried folding something into last year into Inspire for that. But then you get to the problem of the complaint of tech ed is that it was so broad covering all those categories, there wasn't the depth that you wanted into each of these areas. And
Yeah.
so because I look at I think this is the logical breakdown. You've got the collaboration folks, Teams, SharePoint, all the pieces. There's Power Platform that's in there. There's Azure stuff in there. There's Fabric things that are in there, but it's like the collaboration stack, information management, data management, like that side of it. Then you have more of the Power Platform, which is, all the tools that are within that, and Fabric, which is doing like the data layer that's heavier in Azure and BI and that side of the world. Like that separation, if you want the in-depth based on your role, makes sense. And if you
Sure.
then combined it into one event, it'd be so massive to have all of the sessions there. Again, it wouldn't have the right impact.
And that's something that we talk about and wrestle with, and right or wrong, we've settled on, as you said, the specialist conferences for the specialist audiences. Now, as you said, Ignite can cater to all, and there are companies that have the kind of super conference idea. It has its pros, it has its cons, and it depends on the audience. But how much you like, as you said, we book conference venues a long way out. You have to get them in Europe in major cities. It's you got to be a couple of years ahead of yourself. And then it's how much space are you taking? How much space can you take? How much can you fit? It's like that's a practical consideration, but really it's kind of audience first. What do we think is best going to serve? And it allows you to go into depth by keeping it specialist. For ourselves, probably not the most efficient way of running it. And of course, there are benefits of running it together. But yeah, so far, this is how we run it. And it's been great because there is, I think of it as a Venn diagram that, as you said, at ESPC, you probably want to, there's some Power Platform stuff you need to know as it relates to Microsoft 365. So that's in there. But then if you want to get deep into the weeds on Power Platform or the dynamic CRM piece in there, then that's EPPC. So there's a kind of, there's a way of, there is some crossover. You can get your entry level and you might say, oh, actually, I'm fascinated to get more into that, or for my colleague or whomever. So yeah, that's how we've done it so far. And yeah, it's June for the Power Platform Conference. It's September for the Fabric Conference. And then it's, because as you mentioned, Ignite has been mid-November. It's late November, early December, trying to make it. ESPC traditionally used to be earlier, but I suppose traditionally ESPC was also the big news that comes out of Ignite.
Right.
Bringing that to Europe and folks get to talk about it. And what I think is how we can help people is the best of both worlds. You get to hear from Microsoft leaders on the big news from Microsoft, the roadmaps, where things are going, straight from the people behind the products, the people with the vision. And you get to hear from people like yourself, the independent experts who are very plugged in and working with different companies and people to say, and this is what works. So this is where that's coming. And this is my independent expertise. So you get to put the two together. And that's the benefit, I guess, of an independent conference like ourselves, a small business running, we can try and bring the best of the two.
How do you look at, since ESPC began back in 2011, how has your approach to community engagement evolved?
Yeah, so it's like the joy, starting from that, the kind of probably the joy of our jobs for our team is the idea of bringing people together,
Mhm.
helping people on their work. Like we would define our purpose around, you know, looking after our customers, looking after our team, but then looking after our customers is helping people achieve professional success in their projects and their career, and bringing people together is key to that, and a community is key to that, because it's the community who has the answers.
Yeah.
So our job is, like a platform, bring people together and let the magic happen, and try and do that in a really nice space, in a nice city, in a nice location, but in a welcoming, a safe and so on space. So important stuff. And bringing the right people together there to let that happen. But so the in-person, you know, it's fascinating time. So we have the in-person conferences we've talked about, and then through the year we have at SharePointEurope.com. Funny you said, we are working on a uniting domain, because for some people
Right.
that works, for some people it's like, I'm Microsoft Fabric, I don't actually have anything to do with SharePoint, but you're SharePointEurope.com. So there's a
Right.
bit of, and if European SharePoint Conference is ESPC, then we got it. So there's work on that in the background. So
Yeah. Yeah,
there's
but
a secret.
that's a great point, because from a virtual perspective, again, you may have to make a decision as an individual, or even as a company, as like that you might send people to it or sponsor the events. You might do business in all three areas, but have to make the time and cost to go and sponsor and
Sure.
send people there to be there. Find the areas that are going to be most impactful. But online, you should year round have access to experts in content and webinars and other things.
Exactly. And that's, I suppose, we, like, the conferences is a good investment of time and money. And we would say, and other people would say, it's so worth it. Like, you get great value back, and it elevates your day and your week and your year and so on. But it's a good investment of time and money. And it's not for everybody. The the free content online, which is from the community, again, people like yourself saying, I have valuable stuff to share, then we have a central place where we can share that through the website, and it's categorized by topics and audience and so on, role and so on. So that's there all year for people to access, a library of it. Like, it's all around the web, but consolidating it into one place is hopefully a good service for people.
Mhm.
And it's just there, and it's free. And as you said, it's different formats. So if you want to do the webinars and get deeper on stuff, if you want to read blogs, you do that. If you want to watch presentations, how-to videos, more technical, lots of different ways of doing things. There's interactive stuff like quizzes to kind of test yourself. And
Right.
we're always trying to look at different ways. And there's obviously brilliant providers of this stuff out there, like brilliant providers of conferences. So you're always just trying to find what's the best way we can help people out. But that's there through the year. But the really interesting thing is, as you said, how do you keep community through the year? There is online, you can community, like,
Mhm.
as we know, like, look at LinkedIn and X and Quora and Reddit and many more, and things like you're doing yourself. The community is there online, is powerful. And then there seem to be in the world less and less places to meet in person.
Yeah.
You know, like in Ireland, like, it was, you met in the pub
Right.
for a drink. You meet in the church. At mass was a big thing growing up. You got your community there. You meet at sports clubs, of course, that's still huge. But also you'd meet in the office. And of course, around the world, there's different dynamics happening on a lot of these things, and getting people to gather in person, because of course you can do tons online, and there's huge value. There's just, you can do more and different stuff face to face.
Right.
So trying to offer both to the people who can't travel, wouldn't like to travel, the expense of travel and whatnot, but then also to those who want to go further, like the sheer benefits of focus, immersion, getting away from the day to day,
Yeah.
really engaging, building the relationships, the connection, the meaning, investing in the professional development and the fun. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, work is hard. It's
Right.
like, you know, it's like we're all busy. And I suppose that makes it hard to justify, but you get so much back from it.
Yeah.
It's like, by immersing it, just the cloud's clear.
Well, I think,
So
and most people too, that again, somebody who speaks at conferences, attends other conferences, and there, working with clients and as an employee or as a consultant with different various partners, and predominantly working with ISVs over the last 15, 16 years. It's events are a big piece of that. Even when I'm just an attendee at a conference, like the sessions are great, but it's not about as much for me as the content that they're sharing as it is to hear for what I do as an MVP, as a writer, as a blogger, a podcaster, kind of all those other things, is what questions are people asking? So I may understand the technology, may understand the concept, and this is maybe repetitive for me to go to that. But then I hear a question from something like, I've never thought of that, or like, and then I'll even follow up with people that ask questions like, what industry, like, what does your company do? Like, wow, just I've not ever thought of that. It gives me ideas. Like, this is, Kevin, this is a list from this week of ideas for blog posts and content and other things to go and do, which I always like write down. When I go to the conferences, like, it is just an idea generation, multiplier of that. And so
Yeah,
it's I always like they use this word, but it's the serendipitous encounters in the
yeah,
hallway, in the expo
yeah,
hall, during or after, a session. Like, that's the networking, of course, but all of the other insights you get where we have the shared experience, but we're learning from each other. It just is so amplified at these events. That's why they're so important.
agree. And that is the power of community in action, giving you, it's energizing and it's inspiring, whether it's ideas or answers to problems, or as you said, hearing a different perspective of, oh, okay, I've never thought of it that way. And that just leads things on. And individually there's benefits, and collectively there's benefits, because that raises the standards. And I heard Jeff Teeper, you interviewed Jeff Teeper at ESPC a couple of years ago. You've interviewed a couple of times. And he put it very elegantly, where he'd said, when I think about my career and all the work you've done, one of the joys of it is the relationships that you form. And that is absolutely, you just get to form those when you meet up with people. And it can be people that you follow online and find fascinating and helpful, and then you get to question further and get to know, and your colleagues, even where teams don't meet up as much, and so on. So there's the relationships, and then there's the effectiveness of it, that it's just, as I said, immersing and focusing in on this. Like, you get your pages of ideas, and that just progresses. And I think we're wired, most of us, to just want to progress.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's a lot in it. There's a lot that the online can do, and that's very important. And then there's a lot that the face-to-face can do. And across a year, to your original question, that hopefully is helpful to people out there, that it is, I feel part of something, there's somewhere I can go that can help. There's people who understand me. As you also said, I can ask questions, I can give feedback, so I can help try and shape the agenda. I say, hey, but what about this? Like, you've done it that way, but what about my context? And yeah, that's very empowering for people.
Well, I love the changes. Like, we were talking about some of the history before we started recording, some of the history of the events. Like, there used to be the dedicated hands-on lab area. There was the community led, or the speakers that are there, and some of the sponsors that are there, these little kiosk areas around topics. And they're like, hey, I'm there to answer all your questions, and there's little
Yep.
stands that have the different products. And other events where they do it, where they have kind of sit down areas that are dedicated to certain experts, and these topics come and ask whatever questions that you want there. But there's also recently, the last couple of years, you included the insight stage, which was more like business topics, soft skill topics,
Yep.
community focused topics. Because I know, because we've had these discussions over the years, going back pre-pandemic, talking with the ESPC team about, what can we do to help, and I provided feedback, as well as, getting people to the website, year round, and what other things that we can go and do. But I kept hearing from people for events over here in the US, we'd love to have more, like, I'm there. It just seems like it's a logical thing to also go in and have some soft skill training things, which are, for this community, but not tech related necessarily.
Yeah, that's really interesting because so on that specific point, the conferences are very technical. If people are there to master the technologies and are passionate about it, and that's the day job. But you can master the technology, but you still have to be able to engage with the business.
Yeah.
You know, like to communicate with the business, to plan your projects, to present, and all the skills around the full worker. So that it did seem like we've got 10 tracks of technical information for you to choose from, and hopefully that will fill your few days at the conference. But if you do want to hear inspiring stories at the inspire stage on the softer skills and other people's stories and things for the full worker, yeah, we thought that would be a nice element. And again, as you said, that was driven by people saying, I'd love to be able to get this at the conference. It's the same with the keynotes. If we add a keynote where somebody is, you want to deliver technical keynotes, and the keynotes are always inspiring anyway because it's the top of the top information on people. Um, but you've been a keynote presenter, so you'll recognize that. But you certainly also have the inspirational speakers who can talk about that, and they're very well received as well when
Yeah.
you get it right. So yeah, the Inspire stage has been a nice addition. You mentioned the Ask the X, and then as you said, the kind of wider experience. You're always looking to keep it fresh and interesting for people and find new ways to help people with the learning and the connections and the career inspiration and that. And yeah, we've tried lots of things, and sometimes you go away from them, sometimes you go back to them. But yeah, as you said, like, in the days of yore, the hackathons were huge. Now, last year it was Promptathon,
Yep.
and people who went to that found that extremely valuable in the generative AI part of AI, to take a business problem and then to solve it solely by prompting. And that was led by Donna and by Chris Huntingford and the guys from Microsoft. So that was fantastic. And then you had the Ask the Experts, as you said, where people can focus on topics and go and ask that question one-to-one. Obviously, you've got the sessions, the keynotes, the workshops, the labs as a way of looking at it, roundtables to allow the more interactive meetings, one-to-one meetings and the likes, with people there. Something Microsoft are great at offering to different people is, we're there and we'd be delighted to meet, because they're very much in listening mode at the conferences, of hearing the mood music and so on. So there's lots of things, and it's all trying to create the best possible experience for people, and of course the idea that people learn and engage in different ways,
Right.
and then of course it's the social part of that, because some people want to let the hair down too and have a good time. And the social is also networking too, for people who say that's a perfect chance for me to get to know people
Yeah.
better and so on. So yeah, there's trying different things, trying to create, and love to hear from people different ideas, and I've seen this work, or have you ever considered that? But yeah, that's a fun part of it, is trying to add things like the Inspire stage, and we're looking at others for this year that are in the works to try and keep things fresh too.
Yeah. It's I mean, that's great advice for regional organizers, others like in your community. Like, for years I helped start a number of SharePoint Saturday events, now these community day events and collab days, and kind of all these different flavors of it out there. You also, and user groups also need to be constantly looking at, because there's a lot of user groups that are struggling, and part of it is, well, are you changing with the changes that have been happening that are out there, or are you trying to do the exact same thing the exact same way as you've been doing over the last decade?
Yeah.
Some things need to evolve and change. Like, we're always going to have keynotes, and we've got like the pre-show, the music things with the lights and things that you guys have done a great job and um, at doing, and there's a lot of fun. There's always, in the keynote series, there's always, like, you had, can't remember his name, the gentleman from 2 years ago, the scientist from, I think he's also from, was he Scottish or Irish? But I know that's
Is
it.
it Raphael
How dare
maybe?
I even say that, Irish versus Scottish? But
Well,
my family comes from both. Those are
Celtic
that
Celtic Celtic brothers and
yeah.
sisters. Yeah.
So, but he was like, bro. So here you have his PhD, the scientist, talking about it. It was really funny, but talking about his research last year. I mean, you had like Donna Sarkar get in, and her presentations are always fascinating.
Yeah.
goes in and gets some insight into like how her brain works and puts things together. It's very
Yeah.
entertaining, but also like I found myself like captured a bunch of notes from like to go and do and to investigate and from those like those again are excellent. But when I come back to kind of the again the main value of being there in person, it's like you don't know what conversations you're going to go and have. Like I try to make a point of to go to every booth in the expo hall to
Yeah.
especially when there's new vendors like what do you guys do, like what this is the first time I've seen you here at this event, never heard of this brand, where are you, what do you do, and it is so much that you've learned that you can learn from what their approach is, their perspectives, same with
Yeah,
talking with
the
end
expo is
users.
a brilliant place for that
Yeah,
to drive those conversations around the booths, and the lunches are there and so on. So it's a real hub of the event. And as you said, there's always new partners coming with different stories, and it kind of tells you where things are going. And like you see in the last couple of years a lot of security vendors, let's say, and it's like yeah,
yeah,
clearly. And
yeah.
then you ask people what's on your mind, and security will be as high as ever on there. And yeah, that kind of
Like, we're
that
seeing
they
more
match.
partners that are taking advantage of the fact that there's events like at a massive Microsoft like Ignite. Partners will get there days early, stay days late, set up. They'll get a hotel room that has a conference room space, or they'll rent the
Sure.
space, and they'll be
Meetings.
doing other meetings. And so they'll be like, "We're down here in the expo hall," and then they'll send other conversations up to the conference room to have other deeper discussions. Microsoft does that sometimes, and all the time,
Yeah.
where it's like deep dive with customer groups, the roundtables, things like that. But it is an opportunity even for the community to say, hey, we're all together on this. Anybody that's interested in getting together and meeting and discussing this topic, like there's spaces for that. You can find a quieter area to go have those kinds of meetings, discussions while lunch is not going on, seating over in the lunch area, for example.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, again, reasons for all of which have nothing to do with the sessions that are actually being presented, which are great too. But again, I spend most of my time doing the other stuff, partly because since I know the bulk of the speakers at these conferences, even globally, and I've sometimes seen their sessions multiple
Sure.
times. Like I know what you're going to say, but I'd rather go have this conversation in the hall. But you have those options.
I think that's it. I think it's catering to people who want to go into the technical sessions who haven't seen it before. There's lots of them, and they're excellent speakers that you're trying to work with on the conferences. And then there's things happening in parallel or outside. There's space to do that for people who want to do to continue the conversation or have seen the sessions before and whatnot. So and that then is hopefully it allows people to say there's this lovely communal experience, but you can kind of customize your route within it.
I always tell people too. I mean, it's good practice. I used to give this advice to partners, like to go in there, but this is true for end users. Your company has given you the funds to go to one major conference during the year, a bunch of other local smaller things, but to one major conference. You choose ESPC, go in with the plan. Like if you have questions that you want answered, specific areas, but if you go in with a written plan of this is what I want to accomplish, you will get so much more out of that. And other side conversations will happen. You'll pick up other things that aren't on that list, of course.
I
But
think that it's really nice when you hear speakers say to us, the people there really want to be there, are really engaged or
yes,
prepared with great questions. And I think that's the thing, that's the lovely thing about it. You can feel the passion. And that's why people talk about the best community in tech
yeah,
in the Microsoft space, because and around the SharePoint community and the evolution of that. And of course, you can see it with the Power Platform community, you can see it with the Fabric community. The passion is there. And that really is it kind of for everybody that adds to it. So it's really nice that you get that feeling.
I do want to go back to, but just a couple more questions for you. But talking about like the logistics and challenges of changing cities, I wanted to come
Yeah,
back to that because that's
yeah,
something like I mean, again, there are like here I'm in the US, but I've been so I used to work for a product company. So when it first started, I was working for a company called Acceler, and I was the chief evangelist, and they'd send me all around the world to go and do that. I went to that. Thankfully, I got in. I had 2 sessions. I actually had trying to remember, but I had like one of the top 3 rated sessions at that first one in Berlin, and it's one. And I'll be honest, like Kevin, you know this, working with other communities, like it's hard to read the Germans sometimes. Like, did they like it? They're very quiet. I had tons of questions afterwards, but then to have such a, and I was talking on, that was back pre Yammer acquisition. I was talking about social integration into SharePoint, or the lack thereof of that
Mm-hmm.
integration, and what companies were doing, and was talking about competing technologies to SharePoint, of what others do and what needed to be in SharePoint. Got great feedback on that. But again, I know that while there's the handful of us that have been to every one of these events of ESPC, there are regulars, but there are very different audiences in each of these different areas.
Yeah.
So I know you guys talk about that and the struggles to keep like the size, the momentum, and the energy when
Yeah.
you're moving countries every year. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges that you experience that are because of moving to new cities?
Yeah, well, we certainly don't make life easy for ourselves because yeah, if you were working with single venue, then that is a lot easier. But it's if it's a European community, international community, if it's an experience, if you want to keep it fresh, then for us traveling around has been a way to do it. And then you get to engage with the local communities. Now, to your question about the challenges of that, apart from working with new venues, new contracts, taking a chance on will this work.
Right.
Some you will see some markets behave very differently when it comes to events, and in Europe, because you have such a difference of language, like you'll hear people say, well, like France is a huge country, a huge
Yeah.
market, and a great tech scene, but well, if it's not in French, then the
It's
French people
difficult.
probably won't come.
Right. Yep.
Southern Europe, different wage rates and so on, and maybe language barriers and whatnot, and will people from Northern Europe travel to Southern Europe? Like there's lots of dynamics at play, and then you're starting from scratch with the local community to say, part of the joy of bringing the event, like so, this one's an easy one for us this year. Like we're in Dublin for ESPC at the end of November, start of December, and because we're an Irish company, it's like great for us to bring people to our home place. And again, it was because enough people asked us and we could make
It
it
was a
work.
great
So
event
on.
last time. Is it the same
Yeah.
location, the same venue?
Same location, the
Yeah,
convention center, yeah, down the
that's a
docks.
great place. Lots of stuff. It's always nice though too with an event that's down where you can then walk to restaurants and things
Yeah,
versus you have to take the train or hop
yeah,
in a taxi. But
yeah. And that's one of the challenges, that a lot of the big convention centers in Europe are outside the city. And then you're saying, are we giving people the experience of being in city X or country X? And that is part of the fun of it, as you were saying before we came online, being able to walk the city in the evenings and take your colleagues places and whatnot, or meet fellow speakers and attendees. So yeah, we do a lot of work, and we are a couple of years ahead. We have to be together. And there's certain venues in Europe we'd love to go to, but you can't get them on the dates we have. And some of them are, you wouldn't believe how expensive they are, that you have to sell an incredible amount of tickets before you can do the rental, the catering, the AV and whatnot. So there's lots to consider in that. But yeah, we've tried to move around. And then you're also thinking of the time of year, because ESPC has traditionally been a winter conference, and people have told us they really like that. If it's really hot and sunny outside, I want to be outside, not
right.
inside. But at the same time, people also would love summer conferences because you can go out and really enjoy the city, looking at its best and the good
Mhm.
lights. There's pros and cons, but you do factor, okay, in December, it's not particularly hot anywhere in Europe. So it's
Right.
even Southern Europe. So there's lots of things. So it's like, is it Christmas and winter markets, or
Right.
is it certain aspects of that city just looks wonderful, and so there's lots of considerations in where to take it. But it has been, if this is about the European community and the international community coming to Europe, for those that do make the bigger trip, that you want to give that experience and to engage in the cultural aspect and to support local areas, and then you're saying to the local community, look, this is your chance to show the thriving local community as to the wider community, and to give that big welcome. Like, the Irish thing, the big welcome is very important to us. Is like, let's welcome all these guests and visitors to our country this time around, and next year somebody else's turn. And you're trying to work that. You're trying to work with the people locally to do that. And again, because the passion is so great in the Microsoft 365 community and the others, you get very open door for people saying delighted, and then you have loads of ideas, and then realities and practicalities kick in, which is never nice.
Always. Well,
You want to do it all.
Well, I'm really looking forward to again the return to Dublin, and there's one of those where the last time I was working and with my company, I was like had no extra time, and very envious of the number of people that stayed. If you came early or stayed late and drove around, like I've got some genealogy work to do with half of my family line, like down in the southern part of the country, and
Yeah,
it's like
Buckley is a
I'm
great
hoping.
Irish name.
I'm hoping to. It comes derived from Buck, but yeah, we're like the three main areas for us are Wales, Scotland, just outside of Glasgow, and
Mhm.
then Southern Ireland. And so yeah, it's a neat. Got some research to do. It's not enough that I can only see back clearly 16 generations. We got to go further. We got so. Uh, on the Scottish side, they're just lucky because whatever church it was never got burned down. The records didn't get destroyed, kind of thing. But and there's some Swedish roots as well. But yeah, no, it's so with that event, it's the first week in December. So ESPC
Yep.
2025 in Dublin.
Yep. A couple of weeks
Anything else
after
you can
Ignite.
share about some of your upcoming plans? Anything like that you're announcing, or anything that's going on online versus in person?
Well, we have Copilot week coming up. So again, people are, you get people saying, "Oh, I've heard so much about Copilot," and then you ask people, "What is the number one thing that you are planning to do this year?" And it's bringing AI to my organization and
Yeah,
bringing Copilot tomorrow. So it's there. People need to know about it, and there's so much happening so fast, and whether you're daunted by that or excited by that, I think people are like, I need to know about this stuff and the wider AI piece. So we have Copilot week coming up. So that's a free week of online training. We do other ones around the kind of big topics that people are interested in. And then, at the conferences, like last year, we would have, for the first time, there were executive tracks and there were partner days and the like. So
yeah,
more, as you said, like with the IT pro and the dev, like focused, you're looking at the different audiences, saying, okay, how can we do that? And something that worked really well at ESPC, I'm working with the Microsoft guys on this, was at the community area that we have, which is a really good meeting place.
hmm
Having a women in tech meet area, or
yep,
having a certain markets like a Benelux meet up, or UK and
yeah,
Ireland, or Dash as we call it, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and like having places where people could come together and meet with people from their area, and that hopefully sustains then after the conference, that people have made they can bring back to the user groups
yeah.
and the local groups and so on, or the collab days events. And there's really nice, so there are things that we've added recently that have worked well, and there's others, but they've been well received by people, that it's just, okay, I really did meet people who are very, very aligned with the same kind of challenges I'm facing, or the same kind of things, same information I'm looking for, and we were able to bounce off each other. So a bit of that has been good. And then we're always planning things like the party,
Of course.
and where to bring the big socials and the fun on top of it. So
Yeah.
there are some things probably worth a mention.
Any last question is any advice for other community or event organizers on like keeping up with the changing technology and adapting to the changing tech landscape?
Yeah, and that is when we ask people, what's the biggest challenge? It is keeping up with the sheer pace of change, and you'd really feel that for people. Like, we all feel that in our jobs, but in the tech space, that is particularly fast in the era of the cloud. And I think, like, it is. I think conferences is when you're like, people would say, I couldn't afford to go to a conference from a time perspective because I'm so busy keeping up, and that makes sense. But then you do hear, like, again, to quote Jeff Teeper to you, he'd said, is there a more effective way to get up? We're caught up on a lot of things and to chart the way forward, separate the wheat from the sheaf. What's the really important stuff that I need to, that this is where it's going, or I got my big answers in one place. So I do think that can help people come up. And of course, there are brilliant free events. There's great paid events. So, and there's local events and national, international events. So I'm not saying you got to go to a big international event. I'm saying events is a good way to do it. And then online, like people will say to us that they do get increasingly great value from Microsoft Learn more and more. The Microsoft tech community, you see just how much rich conversation is there. Podcasts, of course, is like, so many people are moving towards that as a brilliant way of getting plugged into what's happening. So that's probably only increasing in recent years. Like they've been around a few years now, but it's probably, you only hear more and more people saying that's how they get their news and information. But yeah, there's a lot of good. I think finding the right one for you and staying plugged into it. It's the idea. I think the overall principle is you can be stuck in your own screen and your own job and your own tasks in your own company, and that will consume all your time. But there's a whole world outside of that viewpoint that can help you with it and might have figured it out. And
It's like, you don't know,
offline.
you don't know what you don't know. That whole
Yeah.
thing. It's like you got to have conversations to find out, what don't I know? Oh, and change your perspective. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think people who are struggling to keep up, there are finding the way that you want to reach. And MVPs, produce so much great content, so much great advice. So there's finding the route for you, and like people like us and yourself can help people say, well, here are the different options, here's the menu, and these are ways that can help you keep up, because everybody understands that that's a real challenge. And it's a nice feeling to feel as caught up as you can be and as clear as you can be on your priorities, that you're in control of the plan, and feeling developed and educated and, thriving at your job, which is like, that it's, whether we like it or not, it's where we spend a lot of our time, and therefore might as well do it great. And getting help to do that can be an efficient and effective way of doing it. So yeah, I think there are people out there can help is the good message for people.
Well, Kevin, really appreciate your time and your insights into this space. Again, this is something where, again, there's a lot that you can apply from this discussion. If you're running a user group or a regional event, a community focused event, or interested, been thinking about maybe your company running. A lot of companies do that. They run their own standalone event and do kind of a minor version of what you guys do. So lots to learn from that. But again, I think we both agree. It's like the as much as you can do to raise engagement online, you cannot replace the in-person side of things. Like it has to be both of those things. It can't be one or the other. You need to do both. But
agree. Yeah,
a little bit biased, but yes, I mean that's my advice.
It's the same. I'm saying it as a person who organizes in-person conferences. So that is a bias, but it's from the vantage point of wanting to help people and seeing the benefits people get from that, and just knowing us humans have been doing this quite a long time, and you can do tons online, absolutely tons. Like, isn't that what we're talking about? The amazing potential of the technology. But getting together with people to do that, it can elevate that work and that experience. So that is it is a powerful thing when done well.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, so appreciate your time and thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Christian, and thank you, everybody.
You've been listening to the CollabTalk podcast. New episodes are published weekly, and you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and most other podcast platforms. Thanks for listening.